late-stage drug development company, and we're focused on developing new treatments for diseases that have a high unmet medical need. Our lead program is in osteoarthritis, and that is evaluating an injectable form of pentosan polysulfate sodium. Osteoarthritis, as you know, is a debilitating condition affecting millions of patients worldwide. And as I go through the presentation, I'll share with you why there's still an ongoing unmet need with osteoarthritis and how Paradigm is addressing it. Our mission is to develop and commercialize a first-in-class therapies for musculoskeletal diseases. And we're targeting inflammation, pain relief, and disease modification. These are all areas where our lead drug, pentosan polysulfate, has shown activity in vivo and in vitro. Our market potential, we are a late-stage clinical development company. We're in phase 3 in a trial that's been approved by the US FDA for starting. We have robust clinical data set and real-world data set supporting the use of IPPS in this indication. And we are addressing one of the largest unmet needs in musculoskeletal medicine, and that is osteoarthritis. We raised $16 million in capital raise in December of 24 to support the phase 3 site activation and recruitment. Next slide. And more about our opportunity. We have a low market cap relative to other ASX-listed phase 3 biotech companies. We do have FDA Fast Track designation, which was granted, indicating that the FDA recognizes the serious unmet need with osteoarthritis and the potential for a Paradigm to address this unmet need. Fast Track designation offers opportunities for accelerated development as well as increased interaction with the FDA. Our phase 3 trial has been cleared to start in Australia, where we have ethics approval, enabling site activation and patient enrollment. As I mentioned previously, we recently raised $16 million to initiate this phase 3 study and enrollment in Australia. Our capital structure remains strong with under 400 million shares on issue and approximately another 100 million options available until February 2026 when they expire at an exercise price of 65 cents. And we have ongoing commercial discussions for regional licensing and positioning for Paradigm for potential near-term partnerships. Next slide, please. So a little bit more about the unmet need for osteoarthritis. This is a condition that continues to increase in prevalence. The treatment for osteoarthritis has not changed over many, many decades. First line of therapy is always pain medication, and that's generally more effective for minor early disease. As you can see on the x-axis here of this figure, as patients progress into stage 2 and become more severe with moderate stage 3 disease, the options for therapy change. Unfortunately, current therapy includes oral analgesics, limited use of steroid injectables, and limited in terms of the amount of times per year a patient may receive these injections. And other therapies that have a high risk of adverse event without a whole lot of effect include primarily opioids, which are really discouraged in terms of the management of osteoarthritis, and then other questionable therapies that the various guidances have not strongly recommended. And then, of course, ultimately, when we see severe stage 4 disease, patients are looking at total knee replacement. So again, not much change over the years in the way osteoarthritis is managed. It represents a high economic burden in the US alone. We're looking at over $100 billion, the cost of managing this disease. And there's a strong need for durable clinical effects, and that's really management of pain and function, as well as some developed drugs that can address the ongoing degeneration and progression of the disease. Next slide. So where are we with our development program? We've conducted phase 2 studies, and we also have some investigator-led studies that have informed us very well of the actions of PPS. and osteoarthritis. Starting with the top two studies, Ghosh and Kumagai looked at the use of PPS in patients with mild to moderate osteoarthritis, and they were able to demonstrate pain reduction, duration of response, in one case out to almost 52 weeks in the Kumagai study, and also some indication that biomarkers of cartilage degeneration might actually be impacted by PPS therapy. Paradigm then conducted two phase 2 studies. You'll see 005 and 008. Each of these studies looked at a dose of 2 milligrams per kg given by subcutaneous injection twice weekly for 6 weeks. And both of these studies showed improvement in pain and function, sustained relief out to 6 months for the first study. And then the second study, which followed patients out to 12 months, showed duration of that effect out to 12 months. We were also able to demonstrate reduction in rescue pain medication use, and importantly, some very positive changes in cartilage degradation biomarkers in the synovial fluid of patients and MRI evidence of some structural improvement. And I'll go into that in further detail. Our development program also looked at some lower doses. As you can see, the first two studies on this slide used a slightly different regimen. So we did a thorough analysis looking at lower doses and confirmed that the minimum effective and well-tolerated dose for this program is 2 milligrams per kg twice weekly by subcutaneous injection. In addition to our clinical trials, we have real-world experience in the Australian Special Access Scheme program, where we've treated hundreds of patients, assessed their outcomes, and showed repeatedly meaningful clinical improvements in pain and mobility. Next slide. Thank you. So this is getting a little more into the clinical responses seen in the first of our two phase 2 studies. In this study, the dose was, as mentioned, 6 weeks of treatment, and patients followed out to 6 months. On the left side, you can see here that the pain reduction occurred very promptly after the initiation of therapy. And at the end of the 6 months assessment, patients' pain still had not returned to baseline, whereas placebo pain had returned to baseline. And on the right side, we assess function. And here again with PPS, we see onset of improvement occurring quite early in the treatment course. And then after the treatment was completed at 39 days, we continued to see improvement compared to placebo control. Again, looking out this time to 6 months, we see that the PPS treated group has not resumed back to baseline, whereas the placebo control subjects have returned to baseline. In addition to these known measures for assessing osteoarthritis pain and function, and that is the KOOS scale, a patient assessment outcome of patient global impression of change was used, where the patients just give a very straightforward assessment of how they feel at the end of treatment compared to prior to initiating treatment. And here, PGIC was significantly higher with PPS compared to the placebo control group. So again, reinforcing what we're measuring with the KOOS arthritis scale. Next slide. So the second phase 2 study evaluated patients out to a year. The treatment course was the same as previously noted. And PPS patients, again, responded very quickly after the onset of treatment. And here you see for pain on the left side and for function on the right side, we're seeing these responses duration out to a year with treatment. So our placebo patients are returning to their baseline. The PPS patients are still having some benefit from the treatment. This is very consistent with what we've heard in our SAS program as well, when patients ask around a year and a half if there's any way they can receive repeat treatment. So we were very eager here to look at patients out to 12 months and see in a controlled trial setting what the responses to pain and function were, and to see this type of duration. We also look at measures which have been determined to be a cutoff for clinically meaningful improvement in pain, and that's cut off of 30%. So here you can see where we're showing that at 6 months and then at a year, that the majority of PPS-treated patients are still showing improvement compared to placebo, and the same for their functional improvement persisting out to 36 days, 365 days, excuse me. Next slide. Now here I want to follow up on some of the comments I've made about structural improvement and improvement in biomarkers. For the first phase 2 study, all patients had a bone marrow lesion at the time of enrollment. This is because we know that BMLs are a marker of severity of osteoarthritis. They are also an indicator for increased pain as well as a more rapid progression to total knee replacement. And overall, in the PPS-treated cohort in this study, bone marrow lesions showed significant reduction compared to placebo controls. And this is just one patient example shown here, but these bone marrow lesions, which are subchondral and really reflect the underlying burden on bone where the cartilage is quite degraded, we see improvement here with the PPS course treatment. And on the right, we're showing some biomarkers that are all markers of the degradation of cartilage. These markers are known to go up over time, as you see in the gray. This is the natural course of osteoarthritis. It is a chronic degenerative disease. And so you will see increase in markers of cartilage degradation over time. Now, in contrast, the PPS arm shown in yellow here, we see that these markers have actually decreased over time. So we're seeing some kind of impact on the rate of degradation of cartilage, giving us some really good clues as to a mechanistic effect and something that's consistent with disease modification. Next slide. In the study 008, where we followed patients out to a year and also did assessments on their synovial fluid, we're showing here that not only do serum and urine biomarkers show consistent evidence that cartilage degradation is decreasing with PPS, but also the synovial fluid itself is showing evidence of those changes and informing us that a subcutaneous course of delivery for osteoarthritis in an index knee, and the index knee is where the fluid came from, are showing systemic as well as local effects that are consistent with reducing the rate of cartilage degradation, again suggesting disease-modifying potential. Next slide. So here in this study, we also looked at MRI evaluation. This time we looked at the MRIs at 6 months after the beginning of treatment. And we were really pleased to see here that at 6 months follow-up MRI, the radiologists were able to quantify the cartilage and to quantify changes in the cartilage over time. This is a structural response that is really in the past has been anticipated as something that would be identified much later after a treatment that actually preserves cartilage degradation. And here at 6 months, we're seeing, if you look at the blue bars, that these are all representing different regions of the cartilage, showing how they were measured over thickness, and we also looked at volume. And in contrast to the placebo, which is showing us a natural course of disease and losing cartilage over time, the PPS-treated subjects are not only retaining cartilage, but we're seeing increases in cartilage thickness over the 6 months. So again, some really encouraging data in terms of the mechanism of PPS at the site of the index knee, as well as disease-modifying potential. And the next slide, please. So where has this led us to date? We are now embarking on a pivotal phase 3 trial to assess the effects of PPS in osteoarthritis of the knee. Next slide. Our program is focused on patients who have moderate to severe osteoarthritic disease. These are patients where they've tried the initial therapy, they've not had good responses to conservative therapy, of medication, physical therapy. Some of them have had articular steroid injections, and their disease has continued to progress. Their pain has continued to occur. So we worked with the FDA to develop a protocol that will really help us to identify clinical responses in pain and function with the dose of 2 milligrams per kg given twice weekly. The study will evaluate 468 patients randomized 1-to-1. It will be a double-blinded placebo-controlled study. The primary endpoint is pain, and we'll assess that by change in baseline in pain measured as the average daily pain score. Our key secondary endpoint is to look at function using the WOMAC score. And a further key secondary endpoint is the patient global impression of change. That's a patient-based outcome I shared with you earlier. Additionally, the study will look out to a year after treatment to look at pain and function assessments, medication use, structural changes by X-ray, as well as MRI. The current status of this program is that approximately 10 sites are in the process of being activated in Australia now. Once those sites are activated and enrolling, we will follow up with activation in the US, where we will expect to have a total number of about 60 sites enrolling for this phase 3 trial. Next slide. So a little more about the schematic of the study. 466 patients totaled, randomized 1-to-1, so 233 per arm. The first injection will start at day 1, and the 6-week course of treatment then ends at day 39. The primary endpoint will be assessed at 112 days. When 50% of the patients have reached 112-day outcome, we will have the DSMB conduct an interim analysis to assess for efficacy, possible early conclusion of the trial based on the pre-specified targeted effect size, and this will all be conducted by the independent DMC. The timing for this interim analysis is expected early in the calendar year of 2026. As I mentioned, we're getting sites started up in Australia now with the expectation to have enrollment in the second quarter of this calendar year in Australia. The key primary and secondary endpoints are, as I've stated, and do include clinical as well as some structural assessments with MRI and X-ray. Next slide, please. So the protocol has been designed really keeping in mind the experiences we've had to date with our phase 2 programs, independently conducted studies by Ghosh and Kumagai, and trying to develop the best primary endpoint to assess a pain response and also the duration of that pain response. So the average daily pain assessment allows patients to consistently report their pain through a diary, and this reduces the reliance of patient recall at intermittent visits, and it also reduces variability. So all this is very important for a pain endpoint in any study. Our key secondary endpoints will evaluate function. Also, we'll look at what the MRIs and X-rays identify. The WOMAC pain, function, PTIC, and rescue medication measures will all be conducted very consistently with what we've shown in the prior phase 2 studies. And we'll be working very hard, as with any pain study, to mitigate the placebo response. Certainly using an average daily pain measurement is one way to mitigate against variability, and a comprehensive program with educating and training the healthcare staff will also be in place. The protocol itself has gone through a very detailed review by the FDA. We've received a lot of feedback on this protocol and have incorporated that into the protocol designed to assure that it's compliant, meets the expectations of the FDA for a phase 3 protocol being conducted for a registration program. Next slide. So just a couple of catalysts coming up and news flow items. We've mentioned that we have Australian ethics approval, so we're starting up with the phase 3 program in Australia now. We have 2 publications under review in different journals regarding the phase 2 study 008, one looking at the efficacy outcomes in that study, and another doing comparative analysis of the landscape for OA treatments. The phase 3 Para-012 first patient enrolled is anticipated the second quarter of this calendar year, and the phase 3 first US participant also expect enrollment in here the second half of this calendar year 2025. And when we have 50% recruitment of participants at the second half of the 2025, we'll start preparing then for the interim analysis, which will be in the first half of 2026. We are having ongoing discussions regarding licensing agreements for both osteoarthritis as well as MPS. So we expect to keep the market informed as we make progress with those discussions. And in terms of this phase 3 study completing 100% recruitment, that is forecast for the first half of the 2026 year. So I hope this provides a overall view of where we are with the phase 3 program and how we designed this program to really incorporate all of our learnings from earlier programs, as well as some very detailed regulatory feedback.
Great. Thank you very much for your presentation today, Dr. Skerrett. We'll take some questions. We've got about 5 minutes, so we'll get through as many as we can. First off, combining a couple of questions that are related here. So can you please discuss how Paradigm's drug compares with competing drugs in the market or in development? And related to that, someone's asked, do you view, you can forgive my pronunciation, semaglutides and liraglutides as any threat to the scope of IPPS?
Right. So where are we in terms of the treatment available for osteoarthritis? As I mentioned earlier, not a whole lot has changed in treatment of osteoarthritis over the years. I mean, patients are still starting out with some very basic pain medication protocols and physical therapy. As you can imagine, early on, this may offer some relief, but as this disease continues to progress, the amount of degeneration of the cartilage ultimately leads to pain that's not readily managed with non-steroidals and paracetamol. And that's where intra-articular steroid injections may be used. There are various protocols at centers regarding drugs like HA and platelet-rich plasma, but none of these are considered recommended by most of the osteoarthritis guidances. So it does leave a very real gap in terms of what we do with moderate to severe osteoarthritis that's no longer responding to the basic oral pain medication. And that's where the data on PPS are especially meaningful, because not only do we see that rapid onset of response, even before the full 6 weeks of treatment is complete, our curves are separating out between the placebo and the PPS treated patients. But as you can see, out to a year, patients are still benefiting from pain and functional assessments, as well as the PGIC from that single course of treatment. So if you ask me where this stacks up against other drugs, I will say the rapid onset of response and the duration of this effect. And then these mechanistic and potential disease modifying areas, which we're continuing to pursue, are adding a whole new layer of response where we have the potential to really do something about the chronic degenerative course of disease. And that's something that's really important for osteoarthritis because nothing is available for that purpose. Now, in terms of some of the new agents that um, might impact osteoarthritis by their effects on weight reduction, certainly obesity is something that is associated with a number of inflammatory and degenerative conditions, and osteoarthritis is one of them. Whether or not we will see consistent improvement in the rate of osteoarthritis with those drugs is really hard to predict. We know there's some potential there. Whether or not there will be enough penetration into the market, especially for this indication, is rather unlikely because most of the time when patients present with osteoarthritis, there's already so much more degeneration of cartilage that can be estimated by the X-rays that are generally the standard of care for diagnosis in addition to the clinical parameters. So obviously, we'll keep our eyes open on what's going on with those drugs. We all know that patients who are morbidly obese can develop very early on severe degenerative arthritis, and certainly there's potential to impact that population. The average person who develops osteoarthritis, middle age, may have a combination of trauma, post-traumatic arthritis, and some degenerative changes, are probably not candidates for the drug solely for that reason. So it's another area for us to keep an eye on, but in the immediate future, I don't see that as changing the treatment course for OA.
Thank you. We'll just try and get through a few more, given we're running out of time. What were the clinical and commercial reasons for changing the primary endpoint from day 56 to day 112? What the statistically data from the two prior phase 2 studies at day 112?
Right. So those are two very important questions. So obviously, from a commercial perspective, where this is a chronic condition and we would like to demonstrate something consistent with a response for a chronic condition. And so that's why we, in consultation with the FDA, moved the primary endpoint from day 56 out to day 112. Certainly, being able to share with patients when you can expect the onset of response is meaningful information, but also being for healthcare providers to be able to look at a 3-month interval and say, I will get at least 3 months of response out of this treatment, likely more, is a very important perspective to provide. And so that's why, from a clinical and regulatory perspective, we've moved the endpoint. In order to do that, we had to analyze our data, look at where we are at day 112, look at the treatment effects we've been able to demonstrate in prior studies at day 112, and look at the pain components of the various endpoint scores that we've used for other studies. So for KOOS and for WOMAC, those independently have pain components. So we did a lot of work statistically looking at those to assure ourselves that we're in the right ballpark with the effect size and ultimately with the sample size for that endpoint.
Thank you. The next question is, why do we need 60 sites if only 466 patients are required?
Because this is the pivotal phase 3 study. We'll be anticipating a confirmatory phase 3 study. The information is very valuable to us. When we set up sites like this and have a confirmatory study, we try to roll over those sites to the second study if possible. So it's really a matter of time, getting in there, getting the sites set up, getting them all very engaged in this study, before there's any competing clinical trial that comes along, and then getting finished so we can keep our program on target commercially.
Thank you. And just one more. Will the interim analysis in Q2 2026 be released to the market or only be known by the DMC?
The details will be known by the DMC. Obviously, we are designing this so that the targets that are meaningful will be part of that interim analysis. But certainly the overall outcome of the interim analysis will be shared with the market. And that is that it's conducted, we're proceeding, or in the case if it's been conducted and, we can conclude enrollment early, that kind of very broad outcome will be shared with the market.
Great. We've run out of time, but thanks very much for your presentation and to the audience for those questions. But appreciate that, Dr. Skerrett.
You're most welcome. Thank you for having me.
Next up at the NWR Virtual Healthcare Conference, we have Chimeric Therapeutics, which will be starting about 5 minutes from now. Thanks again.